Hi. Okay, so I'll do a little introduction before I played this bit, but I thought we could just start off with firstly, welcome Lorena, and thank you again for rearranging when my Wi-Fi was being not great, but I think it's really good now. So
this is great. No, this looks perfect.
This is better than a lot better than it was before.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe you could just start with like introducing yourself, what you do, and also like where you live. I find that so interesting and so unique.
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Uruguay, obviously, because we've talked about that a lot. If anybody listens to because I have my own podcast. I'm from Uruguay, grew up in New York, and now I'm living in the Cayman Islands. So yeah, in the Caribbean. So it'd be near Cuba, Jamaica, around that area. And I do a lot of things. I feel like I'm multifaceted. The main thing I do really is obviously my Akashic record readings. I'm an Akashic record reader / healer. I also work a lot with flower essence therapy, which is amazing. I love it. And then I do a bit of psychic and mediumship readings, not so much. I always gravitate towards more like the Akashic realm. And now I'm studying family constellation. So I'm moving more into like a more healing, energetic healing kind of space. So that'll be next year. So yeah, it's a bit of everything. And then also I have my own business where I do like virtual assistants. I do graphic design and branding and logos and sales. So I'm all over the place. And obviously the podcast with my sister. We have a community, a Patreon. So yeah, a lot going on.
Oh, that's so amazing to hear. Like, before I kind of will put our interview bit in the episode, I'm going to do a little introduction for you, but I haven't recorded that. And so in my head, I was going to say like, oh, Lorraine, like Akashic Records Reader, yada, yada, yada. I knew you did the flower essences. I don't think I knew you also did graphic design on the side. And what else did you say? Yeah, like the mediumship, but I guess maybe you're less vocal about that on social media, right? Maybe it's something you do separately.
Way less. Well, I mean, it's all on my website, but I don't talk so much about it. So even like with the Akashic readings, I do Akashic counseling, which I open the person's records, but it's more of like a counseling session, like a coaching session. So we work through limiting beliefs or a specific thing like that person's going through at that time in their life. And I always feel guided to use the flower essences. So like yesterday, for example, I did a session with somebody, or I think it was 2 days ago. And I just did a little flower essence formula, like a personalized formula. This can be super powerful. And usually I'll be guided to kind of help the person, or the person books into it. So it depends. But yeah, the graphic design, I actually studied graphic design and film and photography. And I'm really passionate about all those things. But yeah, I don't really talk about it, I guess, in the spiritual realm.
Yeah. Okay, so much for us to get into. Wow, I love that. Well, let's just start with Akashic Records, maybe, because like to me, I found you through Akashic Records. I found you I found you because I was actually telling you that really weird synchronicities led me to finding you. I haven't actually told you.
I was gonna ask you anyway.
Yeah. So I'll segue that into Akashic Records and what they mean to you. But I was doing my level 2 Reiki training, I think earlier this year, maybe like February. And I was staying at a friend's house, and then I had to get like the bus from her house to where I was training, and it was quite a long bus journey. So I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and I don't know what I Googled. I don't know what I searched, maybe Akashic Records. And I found you and your sister. And I was like, whoa, these girls are like amazing. Like, I just loved your podcast so much. You really like talked about things I hadn't thought about that much before. Like, especially I think like, actually, I'm going to make it up. I actually don't know what episodes I listened to, but you made it really like clear and structured. And I was like, oh, I love that. I think one of them was about soul contracts. Like I'd read books on that. I like knew a lot about it. I knew it was resonating with me, but like you just said it in such a clear way. And so on my little like Reiki journeys, bus journeys, I was listening to your podcast, kind of stopped, forgot about it. And then I had like a week's holiday with my sister. And it was like no, like minimal social media, like basically no social media, but like minimal phone, so we could like just tell people we're alive and like what we're up to. But otherwise, like no social media, nothing, and just like recharge and reconnect. And I was doing a lot of reading, and kind of like we were just centering, like really not looking for anything, but to just like pause life, come back to ourselves. And I kept on reading the Starseeds book by Rebecca Campbell. I don't know if you've read that one.
I haven't read it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
And I just kept on going to like her Akashic Records pages. I was like, what is with this? And then I came back from my holiday and I was like, do you know what? I need an Akashic Records reading because I'd known about it. I didn't really know when would be the right time to book it. And so I came back from the trip and I didn't follow anyone who does readings. I was quite new to them, so I didn't know enough to like gauge who would be like a good reader. And then I just remembered like all those months ago when I listened to these girls' podcast and I was like, oh, like what were they called? I found you guys just straight away. And then really random intuition led me to pick you for some reason rather than Lucia. And I think now that I kind of like, I know which voice is whose and like what your energy is, what hers is, I'm like, of course I picked Lorena. Like, I feel
Of
like you're
course.
such a more kindred spirit to me than Lucia, or at least like you're more similar to me, even if I would also resonate with her stuff. But it seemed really random that I picked you when I did. And then two
I was
Akashic
gonna
Records
ask
readings
you.
later. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's been two. Wow. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
they were
they really
powerful
helped me.
readings.
Yeah,
A lot
I
shifted.
didn't know I was booking them, and then like the messages just came through so clearly. Like you really just helped me with some things. So with that, like what are the Akashic records to you? Like what is a reading to you, and how would you describe them?
Like, I like to kind of sometimes explain it to people because it's so hard, and I'm sure you'll understand this. It's so hard to explain what a reading is if you
Mm,
haven't been in one and felt it. So there's
yeah.
like the logical response, but I also want to go into like the emotional, or like what it can help with, or what
Mm,
you can connect with. So on one end, to me, I'll go more into like the actual, yeah, like what it actually means. So opening the records or getting a reading, we can open our own records. So there's ways to access our own records. We can get readings from other people. But the Akashic Records really is like, some people refer to it as the book of life. Some
yeah, I've
people
heard
like
that
to
one
look
a
at
lot.
it. Yeah. And that's the way I was taught it. Like, it's the book of life. It's the book of your soul.
Mm,
But it's also the Akashic realm it's like an infinite library. Some people like to, I even visualize it sometimes, or when I'm doing specific readings, they'll show it to me in that way. So it's as if it was like this huge infinite library in the ethereal realm that is just all the books of the souls. And we can access our own book, or we can help somebody access their book through an opening prayer. So the opening prayer really just has an intention, a vibration that helps open. And from there, as a channel, be it that you open your own or somebody else opens your records, you're able to connect with the information in that book. What I always like to explain is the book has the information, but it's your soul and your spiritual team that bring that information down. So as a reader, or if you open your own records, they will help kind of extract that information through your questions. The questions are, like I said to people, if anybody's at a reading with me, the questions are the most important part of a reading, because that is you using your free will to bring, it's as if you were like doing like a Google search, right? So you're putting a question into Google, and then all of a sudden you get like a list of things that you can click on. It's the same way with kind of your book. It's as if you're searching through the book, through your questions. It helps bring that information down.
mm,
So the Akashic records are all about information. They are about healing, but the information's what helps you heal, basically. It can move energy, because to connect, we have to go into the fifth dimensional realm. So we elevate our energy to bring that information down. And really the idea with a reading is that you can get answers, you can understand yourself, you can understand soul contracts, because it is all about the soul. You can ask about people and if there's any karmic things, but really it's about the present. And I think I always like to say that to people, because some people are like, what's going to happen in the future? That's usually possibilities, probabilities within the Akashic realm. But the present is the most important part, because the present is what you're dealing with, where you're going to heal, where you're going to look at things, right?
mm,
But the past is also very important, because the past can come up with past lives, or your past in your life, right? Of things that you've been through that are holding you back today. So it's a lot of generally my readings, I record them and I send them to people because it's so much information. And I always say to people, you listen back and you're like, it was like another reading. It was like all that info. I thought I understood it. And now it's
That
like,
was me.
it's so interesting, isn't it? It's because we're in the fifth dimensional energy when we're connected to the record. So if I were to open your records, or like I already opened your records, you're also connected to that energy. So there's also a sense of these readings bringing a sense of peace to people, but a sense of understanding, and also this sense of really feeling connected to their soul. They feel so connected to themselves for even months after a reading that's why I would go back at the beginning when I first started getting readings from others. Like, I think it was my early 20s. I was like, I have to go. I want to keep going, because it made me feel, it gave me what I couldn't find within myself, you know? And I think readings can provide a sense of peace, of you understanding the path that you're on, why things are happening. But ultimately, it's like we're accessing the book through that library, bringing it down, and your soul and your spiritual team are here. And you're, as a reader, you're channeling. So I'm receiving the information. I feel, I see, and I just get lots of information. I hope that answers the question. I know that went all over the place.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, no. Literally chills as you were saying that. I was like, tick, 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 like that was exactly my experience, I think, with you. And yeah, so yeah, the Akashic Records, right, are this, like, to me, they are like the library of knowledge, and then like the book of your life. And I actually wanted to ask you, like, how do you imagine, do you imagine them? Because I've done, like, I've guided myself like into it like once. Not, I haven't trained properly like you would train people. But I was intrigued and I did this guided meditation, and it looked so clearly like a library. Like, I knew exactly what it looked like when I went into that self-guided meditation. And I was thinking, do other people see it like that? Do other people maybe see it more as like, because Akasha comes from the Sanskrit word meaning like space, right? Like, maybe to some people it's just this like void. Yeah. So I love
It's
that.
not,
That's
yeah, it's not something tangible, but yeah, a lot of people, like I'm more connected to like the actual book. When I open somebody's records, like I can see the book open, which I didn't used to at the beginning of my journey as a reader. But I also, when I close the records, I see the book close. So it's like it closes and it leaves. So it's like comes to me and then it leaves. And it's kind of also, I think, a really good kind of thing to state here, that as a reader, when you open somebody, it's not your information. You have to respect it. You have to really bring a lot of, you have to move away from your ego. This isn't about you anymore, right? But I like what you said also, and I think I want to make sure, you know, I don't think there is one way to access the records. The way I teach it with my sister, the way we talk about it, the way that I do it, doesn't mean that it's the only way. And I think some people don't even need an opening verse. They can just put that intention forward. But I've always talked about my struggle with opening the records, right? So to me, I like having the routine, the ritual, and putting that intention through an opening prayer or verse. But I do feel people can go through it in, like, I've meditated before without having my records open and seen a past life, because I set that intention. So I think things are changing energetically, really, and from what it was even like a couple years ago.
In what ways
We
do you
just have to
mean?
it's easier to access information if we're really open to it and we're doing our healing, that we can find our way to do it. And I think also, I think with the practice of using an opening verse and really dedicating kind of your energy to helping people, it's like the universe makes it easier for you to access it. So I can think about my records and they open. But my problem is myself. I sometimes don't trust that. That's my own issue, though.
I feel you. Well, yeah, when you were saying it makes you, an Akashic Records reading can help make you feel closer to your soul, and that it's best to ask about questions now, right? And so when I booked my reading with you, and also it's interesting that I booked a reading with you rather than like a psychic or an intuitive reading, because there's someone that I had already seen and she channeled a lot of really useful information for me. I don't know how much I don't know what she accesses. I don't know how different that would be to the Akashic Records, because both were connecting me with my soul. But for some reason, I just really felt drawn to that Akashic Records reading. And so when I was like writing down my questions, they really were all like in the present moment-ish. And it's so, you really want to say, like, when will this thing happen? Like, when would this come through? Like, when will I have like this thing and this thing and this thing? And like, that's just our ego. Like, that's just not, you can't ask, like, at what time will I have my big reveal? At what time will, like, I receive this thing? Because the right question, right, is like, what can I do now to get to that thing?
Correct. Or what do I need to heal? What's blocking this thing from coming
Mm,
in? Or what steps can I take today to heal this so that this thing can fully just manifest?
yeah.
It is more about that energy. And you know what? I agree with what you're saying. Like you're saying, maybe the psychic could have access some kind of Akashic
Mm,
information. And it's interesting. Sometimes it can be very blurry. But the way I like to kind of differentiate the Akashic records from any kind of intuitive or spiritual reading, information might overlap, right? Or I think there's a lot of moments you said, "Oh, the psychic said this to me too," and then we went like deeper into it.
yeah.
It
Yes.
goes deeper because why? Because you're asking the right questions. And I make sure that in my case, I'm like, these are examples of questions. I have videos, I have blog posts. I'm like, go deep. It's not surface level. You want to understand why things are happening. You want to get to the source, to the root. When you can do that, it's like things can start to shift and open up. But
Yeah.
also, I think a lot of times your spiritual team or your soul will be like, it's time, like, let's go.
Yeah. Well, I think it was one of these, like, I don't know why I booked this. And then I had my questions, but when I booked the reading, I didn't know what I was coming for. I already saw that you had a lot of posts and you have so much information on your website and YouTube that is just so useful if you're new to the Akashic Records reading. I didn't really read much of it. I was like, I need this reading. And then
Sometimes
you were
it's
like,
nicer to
okay,
go in
prepare.
blind. Yeah.
And then you said, prepare your questions. And then I started like preparing my questions. And I got clear on why I was booking it and what I was looking for. But the whole time I was kind of like, I feel like what will come up will come up. Like I might not be on the right track. But what I find interesting, and I think you've spoken about this either in a podcast or maybe you just said it to me one-on-one, but you asked me to prepare my questions, right? Because it sets my intention, it gets me in the headspace. Maybe I think, I don't know if that's how you see it, energetically, I think maybe gives you permission more to access my records, but you didn't actually ask me what my questions were. You just
Mm-mm.
started answering them. I
That
was
happens a
like,
lot with the records.
wow,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like the person will come on the call and I get what I call the initial or intro message. So they just start bringing in from it'll get to a point where that information will kind of stop. And that's where I'll put the energy to the person to like, what do you want to ask? Because then that's where the things go deeper.
yeah,
That's where we go to other levels and we start to understand. I think I just remember your face the first reading and you were like, your little eyes. I was like, wow. I was like, I'm not sure how she's feeling right now. I was like, she feels so open. But I was like, I hope this is resonating with her. Because, that's your own
yeah,
internal doubt as a reader. Sometimes you're like, is this? And it definitely clicked for you because the amount of shifting that has happened after each reading has been insane. Like, you're a clear example of like when you commit to the work and you really listen and you take the action. It's I can give you all the information through a reading, which isn't
mm,
it's not my information, it's your information from your book, your soul, but you have to do something with that.
yeah.
That's
I
in your
think I think
hands.
that's why I think that's why your recordings were really good because I know which moment you mean, how you said, my eyes, and then you were kind of like, is she okay? I was just so taken aback by how from the moment our reading opened, you just said things that really resonated with me that I wasn't expecting. And they just really hit me. And I think it was things that it's one of those moments when I think you have like a soul remembering, but you're so overwhelmed and it's so sudden and you don't really know what to do with it right now. And so when I did listen back to the recording, I realized when you were kind of like asking me questions and like trying to check in on me, I was just like, I was somewhere else. I was absolutely somewhere else. But then because I re-listened to the reading, I could actually take it more in. And I feel like how you were saying, it's like you need to actually do the work, like with anything. I think, I don't know, like in the past, say like in my late teens, if I would read these like self-help books, and some of them really impactful, really changed my life. Some of them I would read and I'd be like, okay, cool, and then leave them. And I think so many people, we kind of like do this like self-help, self-growth, and we're like, okay, like I read the book, like that's enough. And it's like, yeah, it can be. Like maybe that was your awakening, and if it helped you, if it gave you comfort, inspiration, like that's amazing. You shouldn't be in this like suffering to get better and to heal. Like it's fine. But like it is actually about going that step further, like reading the book again, or like doing the exercises, or like really like reflecting and not rushing as well. When I re-listened to the reading, I paused, I took some notes, and I was like, I need to make the most out of this. Like it's like an hour of you just channeling so much information that is specific to me. So why wouldn't I really try and understand it? Otherwise, I'm just entertaining myself for an hour, which is fine. But if I really want to take it in, it's actually really useful to record and re-listen. And yeah, and the second one as well, I re-listened to that one, even though I was a lot more present and I actually like remembered more without having to re-listen to the whole thing. Yeah, I think these are really useful. Yeah.
It's interesting. I think I get a lot of first time readers, like people that it's their first reading. So I'm all about first introducing myself, making sure that they feel safe, that, you know, to me, I always say, especially when I teach level 2, so when other people learn to open records for other people, it's you're creating the environment, the container. This goes for anybody who's doing spiritual work. Like you have to create that energy for the person to open up and ask those questions and really be vulnerable. That's where we get to like the good information coming down and the person being able to like connect with it in a way that it hits them. And they always bring the information down because it's obviously your soul and your spiritual team bringing that down, but they'll communicate that to you through me. Obviously, if you're getting a reading from me or from whoever, in the way that it needs to kind of connect with you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they understand. For some people, it'll be very much like, it's now, this is the energy, this is the encouragement. They'll focus on whatever they know that you need to hear for you to take that action or to take those steps. But then that's really in your hands, right? And I think that's where you can empower yourself to be like, I have all the information I need. Now, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
And there's always support. Like I always say to people, like, let me know how you're doing. If you're taking flower essences, that could give you that extra little push to feel more confident or to work through something or to push yourself or to feel more motivated. They can work in really beautiful ways to just kind of like hold your hand through things as well.
Well, yeah, let's go into that. I wanted to ask you more about flower essences. I really don't know much about it. I think I've read about it a bit on your website, maybe.
Very
but
little
yeah,
on my website, actually. I'm so
oh,
bad.
maybe
I
on
need to
your
put more.
Instagram then. I
Yeah.
think what I saw it somewhere and it was something to do with you. Yeah, like what, like I guess like what is it? And then secondly, like how can it help you and what do you like do with it in your, if you want to go into it?
Yeah, I love flower essences. I don't do enough of it actually. I think a lot of people don't know about it. I think that's the thing, right? Where
Yeah, yeah, it's not very well known.
no, I think it's becoming more well known, but it's been around for a long, long time. I don't remember the exact year, but Edward Bach, which is kind of the first flower system. There's a lot of flower systems now. Edward Bach, British actually, started creating flower essences from the buds of specific flowers because basically he found that there are personality types, but there were also things that people were going through or feeling or moments of their life or grief or emotional turmoil or insecurity because of whatever. So he connected a lot of the flower essences to specific personality types or things. And he basically said, I mean, he's such a pioneer if you think about it, said that everything's stemming from something emotional. Any symptom is stemming from something emotional. So the flower essences were there to kind of create healing through a vibrational in an energetic way. So basically specific flowers have specific properties. So there's different ways to prepare the formulas or the flower essences themselves. But the flower essences are the buds of the what do you call it? The flowers that are in full bloom. They're picked and there's like a boiling method. There's a sun method. So for example, the sun method, you would pick those buds, put them in a crystal bowl with water in the sun for a specific amount of time. And then it's as if the properties of that flower get imprinted into that water. So there's not like a biological or chemical response in your body when you take flower essences. It's all vibrational and energetic. So the idea with the flowers is choosing the right ones, hence why I do personalized formulas for a lot of people. Or if there's something specific, I say, take this flower because this is what you're going through, and this is what it's going to help you. And the idea here is that it brings you back into alignment, into homeostasis, because something's brought you out of that. So for example, if it's grief, it could have been the loss of a pet or a family member or a loved one. So the flower essence would bring you back, instead of taking, for example, which you could still do both at the same time, actually, because you can take medications and flower essences. So it would bring you back into full alignment of love and being able to heal and express and work through that pain. The way I kind of do this is through flower essence therapy. So a lot of times I'll combine that with the Akashic Records, where I'll have a session, a lot of information will come through, and then I'll take an extra 15 minutes at the end of a reading to chat with the person and saying, from this reading, I would work through these things, but tell me what you want to work through. What are the things you're struggling with right now? And usually everything that came up in the reading is spot on. So it gives me a huge kind of insight onto what we need to work through. And then we can add a few more things. But the formulas are usually anywhere between 5 to 7 flower essences that are put into like a little bottle, and you take 4 drops 4 times a day. And it
like
literally just
like in your mouth?
Orally. Yeah, you can make creams out of them. So you can use them topically sometimes, but the most common method is orally. So you put 4 drops under the tongue. And it just, you have to be consistent though. I think that's where a lot of people are like, it's not doing anything. You have to take 4 drops 4 times a day, and you have to be super consistent. And that's when your body starts to shift. So I work with a lot of people that are struggling with self-love. They're working through a lot of feeling of repressions of emotions, or it can come into certain specifics of like trauma, like, and there's abuse. There's tons of flower essences, because I work with 2 systems. I work with Bach, and I also work with Flower Essence Society, or California flowers. So they both really are beautiful. They're taken in the same way. It's 4 drops 4 times a day. And I work a lot with like the mother wound, the father wound, trauma, abuse. There's a lot of beautiful flowers that work also with the feminine energy. So I've worked with a few clients where it's getting more connected to that feminine energy of manifesting, of emotions, of flowing, because of things that have happened in their life or what they're going through. So you can literally work through anything with flower essences.
Wow.
It's beautiful. And I usually try my best to complement it with something we're already, like if we're already working with a reading or counseling or coaching, I'd bring that in, because it feels like it just brings that extra healing and support.
So when you say you work with Bach and the other system, is it that you, what's it called, sorry?
California flowers. I just call them California flowers. Yeah.
Is it that you follow their procedures, or do you like order the essences from them? Like, do they prepare the essences, or do you?
I used to do that.
Or does the person?
Just because I'm on an island, it becomes a bit difficult for me to like ship anything out, and I don't have the flowers here with me. So I have a provider, somebody that has their own shop online, and I've interviewed a few people, and this person's super aligned with the way I work. So I just send the link. So if you're in the United States, I send everybody to this person. And then otherwise I have, had people in Spain, some people in the UK, Australia. So I have different people that I've looked into. So I just send them to somebody else to prepare the formula. I create the formula. So I know what flowers go in it, and then they order it from somebody else.
Okay.
In Uruguay, I've started my own business in that, where I'm just going to create general formulas for, some people it's for, for stress or for grief or for self-love. So there'll be different formulas, and then personalized ones as well. It just, shipping can get quite costly. And I did the numbers. I was like, no, that makes no sense to ship out of Uruguay to the United States when somebody can get it so much more cheaper from somebody else. Like, it just made no sense. So it's just easier, and it's quicker for people too, because then they can order in a couple of days, they have it at their house. It's great.
And it's better for the earth as well, like less travel times. I was looking at ordering reishi mushrooms recently, and I found this really cool company. And I really resonated with a lot of what they were doing, but they're based in Australia. And I was kind of going towards the checkout, and I was like, let me just see how much delivery would be. And I can't remember, but it was like half the price of the reishi mushroom powder. So I was kind of like, no.
That's the same. Like, I did the calculations. I was like, shipping is more expensive than the actual product I'm
Yeah.
selling. Like,
Yeah.
no.
So I just thought no. But I love what you said about the vibrations. Because I'm doing like some research on like an upcoming episode that I hope to do on like there's like all this talk right about like raising your vibration and like being high vibes. And I think a lot of it, yeah, like I think sometimes it gets lost in translation, like this kind of like high vibe. You even get tops with it, right? Like high vibes only, da 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 da. And it can get a bit toxic as well, like, oh, you know, I only want high vibes things, but it's actually like a real thing if you're on this journey of growth and spirituality and awakening and remembering that as you're healing and growing, like you are literally raising your vibration. Like there's a range of like humans as vibration, like the body, our body's vibration, our different organs have different vibrations. And so when we eat higher vibes foods, so like less processed foods, when we have like essential oils around us, I'm pointing because I have some over there. When we have like crystals around us, like all these things that are like made by nature and have these high vibrations in them, they can help us to raise our vibrations. And plants are a really big part of that. And roses, right, have the highest vibration of anything, like rose oil, rose petals, just rose as a plant has the highest vibration from what I found. Is that
That's
like,
interesting. I
do
never
you
heard
look at
that, but
flowers
yeah,
like that? Oh, okay.
there are flowers that I don't remember. It's not rose, but it's like I don't remember because there's over 100 flowers in the California system.
Oh, wow.
So imagine Bach is smaller. It's about 38, 39 if you include one of his formulas, which is probably one that most people have heard of, is Rescue Remedy. They sell it like at Whole Foods and a bunch of other like online like holistic shops.
Maybe I've like seen it. I just
You've probably
like I don't know that it's that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a yellow bottle, like a little skinny yellow bottle. I always
I'm
have
sure
that in
I'll
my
see it
bag.
the next time I go into like, yeah, Planet Organic or Whole Foods, I'm sure I'll see it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking where I send people in the UK, it's I don't know if and it's not Holland and Barrett, but I'm pretty sure that they have a lot of like holistic things there.
Holland and Barrett do, yeah.
But it wasn't that.
Planet Organic is the other one, or we have Whole Foods too.
Do
It's not
you? I
as
didn't know that.
common. Yeah.
Since when? I don't even remember that. This is crazy.
I know there's a shop in London. I don't know where else, not where I live.
Wow, I
But
love Whole
I
Foods.
think it does exist. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
But even here at the supermarket, you can get at one of the supermarkets, they sell Rescue Remedy. So you can buy they're like little candies, or you can get the
Yeah.
drops. They're different ways to take those.
Amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying with the vibration. Like it's not bypassing because that's not what the flowers do. And it's interesting. I think a lot of
Oh,
people
I wasn't trying to imply that. Yeah, I
no,
meant
no,
more
I'm just
like
saying, I'm
higher
just giving
vibes
you my
things
take.
around
Yeah.
you. High vibe.
Definitely, definitely. But I think a lot of times, a lot of people think, will the flowers make me feel worse before I feel better? There's very few flowers that can create some kind of reaction. They're very gentle, and that's what I love about them. Because I found I did years of homeopathy, like myself with a homeopath, and I just found that my symptoms sometimes got so bad before they got better, like allergies and things like that. And I don't think that's always the case, but I always like to tell people like it's not going to get worse. It's just going to bring you back to alignment. And that'll also mean that you have to stand up for yourself in certain situations. You might have to speak up. It'll give you the courage and the energy to do what you need to do, basically. Or to deal with those things that are happening in your life. It's not fixing everything. And what I was saying with the bypassing, I mean, we have to surround ourselves by the vibrational things, but we also have to feel into the emotions. So if a flower essence is asking you to deal with your repression, you'll deal with your repression. So that means feeling everything so that you can elevate your vibration.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Well, I feel like from what you were saying, I don't know if I would think that flowers would make it worse before they get better, just because just the name of it, like flower essence, it just sounds
so gentle.
Yes, exactly.
They're gentle,
So
they're
gentle.
Loving. They're
And
like
kind of
the most beautiful energy.
Yeah, and kind of like essential oils. Like I don't think I've ever like used an essential oil and then just thought like it's made it worse. I think that like even they are just really gentle, and they're just another tool. And yeah, if they help you, then they help you, and if you don't resonate, then you don't resonate, I guess. But yeah, that sounds
a lot
that
of
sounds
things
very
too, right?
gentle.
You'd use the flower essences, you use the oils, you use the Reiki, the reading, like you can use it all.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was definitely something that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, so going back to the Akashic records, like I guess for me, a main thing that really resonated is how I kind of said, I feel like you really connected with my soul. Like I feel like you really channeled things that I knew. And even as you were saying it, I was saying that too. You kind of described how like my soul looks like. I don't know, I was doing that.
I
How my
remember that.
actual soul looks like. And I just thought, if there's a way that I would want my soul to look like that would be it. And you were just like, oh, it's so beautiful, it's so beautiful. And I was like, describe it. And then you started to
I don't
describe
remember
it.
it very well, but I remember the essence of it. Because
I
I'll
think you say you
preface,
don't remember after. Yeah.
yeah, it's not my information, but now that we're on this call and we're connected, obviously some of it can come back, but then I'll
Yeah.
forget it again.
Yeah. Well, you say you like go into the 5D, right? So like I'm more still in the 3D whilst you're talking to me. So if you're the one that's going up, I guess it's harder for you to remember.
It does raise your vibration a bit though when you're in the
mm,
reading,
mm,
because I'm accessing it through you. So that's why you
interesting.
never force somebody to do a reading. I would never try to convince somebody because those readings usually will not end well. Like you probably won't be able to connect or I won't go deep. Um, but one thing you said is even the moment that that person's saying, I'm going to write down my questions, that's allowing the information to start flowing in, even for you before we even connect. It's a huge part of the process. But going back to what you were saying, the soul, I'm not the biggest vision, like I don't get that many. I'm getting more visions now when I do readings. But I think with you, I'm remembering kind of the vision that came through with your soul. And I don't know why your soul wanted you to see that, but it feels like it allowed you to connect with it.
It
Maybe that's
really
what you
did.
needed
Yeah.
because that resonated so strongly with you that later you were able to say, wow, that had a huge impact. And now maybe
Really
you're more
did.
of a visual person too, and that maybe that just having that vision can help you feel more connected to your soul.
Yeah. I think I really am a visual person. And I think I've been like that for a while, but I think only recently have I like realized that it's more that I'm visual rather than everyone experiences it like that. Because one of the main things that our reading led to is you saying, you asking me to do more Reiki, and then that would help me to work on my own intuitive and energetic reading abilities. And when I started doing that, like it's mainly all visions and then some words. Like I think those are like the two main ones for now. And the visions are really cool for me because I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, this is amazing. But then you have to like transcribe it and describe it to the person, and then also like evaluate it together and make meaning out of it. When it's words, I find that more useful because I can just say this came through and then it's really obvious and it's really clear. So the images I think are really enjoyable if I'm doing work for myself. I'm doing like going deep and meditative for me. For other people, it's fun, it's interesting, it's very beautiful. But
Yeah.
then yeah, you have to like paint the picture to the other person and then like get the meaning and put it all together.
Interesting. I would say go a little deeper into that because I think a lot of times you don't realize that the visions could lead to the words. That's my case. The
that has
visions
sometimes happened, yeah.
describe the vision or you connect to the vision, you acknowledge it, you describe it, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
information starts coming in.
Yeah.
Allow it in. That could be a form of you starting the channeling process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's happened a lot. Like I've described the image and then like as I'm talking about it, like the words come through and then it like makes sense to the person. But yeah, I think that's actually really interesting. I think, yeah, we all like receive information differently. And I think people that might be like even new to this sort of stuff, like maybe they don't even realize that we all receive it differently, and what's obvious to you or what might seem normal to you might actually be like really special and like your thing and like really unique to you. And I love
Totally.
that. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I even talk about my journey when I started doing readings for others, that I
Mm.
would cut, because my sister had been doing it for so much longer, that I was constantly comparing myself to her and how she did it. And I kept unconsciously comparing, but also trying to do it like her. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like her at all. We're very
Mm.
different as human beings, but also as channels, as Akashic record readers. And I think that's something that you said, I don't know why I felt drawn to your energies. Probably, this is what I say to people: go to the person you feel drawn to, listen
Mm-hmm.
to your intuition, because that person might give you what you need at that moment in your life. You just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Like,
each
don't,
reader is different.
yeah, don't, I think, yeah, what you're saying is, yeah, go with your intuition and don't try and like analyze it. And like when I'm picking between you two, if I automatically kind of got drawn to you, but I could have stopped myself and said, like, why? Why don't I like go really logical about this and write all the reasons of yes and no? And it's like, that's not your intuition now. You're just trying to
Exactly.
work out like a maths problem that you've just made up for yourself, and it just doesn't exist.
Yep.
So you just trust, yeah. Well, would you like to go into like how you started into like Akashic Records reading? Because I would be so interested to know like how you found them, and then how you took the steps to like change from what you were doing before to doing this now.
Yeah, it
Big question.
started in my, yeah, it's a good question. And it really probably started in my 20s. My mom knew about the Akashic Records, and I don't
Wow.
know, because my mom's always been a very spiritual person. She was a Reiki master. She still is. She's really good Reiki practitioner. Um, and we had done like astrology. She's always like, oh, I want to get my natal chart. So then we all got our natal chart. And
Mm,
at some point she mentioned the Akashic Records, and I was seeing somebody at the time that I mentioned it to, and he says, I know a reader. We didn't know any readers where we lived in Uruguay. So he gave me that contact. I believe my mom went first, then my sister went to her, and then I went to her. And it completely blew my mind. I was like, and she's a very similar reader to me, I feel. So I felt really
in what
drawn to her.
way?
Just very emotional, very kind, very
Mm,
gentle, very much about the soul, very much about healing the inner child, the family. And that's
mm-hmm.
exactly what I needed at the time. So I went to her like every 6 months. I wouldn't like time it. It's so weird. I just felt drawn to it. And at some point in that journey, I don't know if it was like a year or a year and a half in, I do a reading with her, and she says, your spiritual team saying like, why don't you learn to read your own records? So I studied with her. So I did level 1 with her, which is opening my own. And it was so hard, like so hard. I gave up before I even started. I want to say that. I always say that to people. Yeah, I was so in my head. I think it was just a point of my life that I was in. And I always connect it to like my own self-love journey of how hard it was for me to just believe in myself,
Mm,
that the channeling felt harder than it should have been, that I probably was channeling, because like today my spiritual team says you were channeling, you were in your head. And I think everybody has that ability to open their own records. We just get in our own way. And then fast forward years later, we're talking like 15, 20 years later, 15, maybe 12 years later, I don't remember. I still would open my records every now and then, but I had just kind of like put them to the side. And it's so weird. I moved to Cayman and I brought my manual. I had a printed manual for level 1, and I had my opening and closing verse. I had them like laminated. They were in my wallet, and I found it one day. And it was on this, I was going through a lot personally in my own, like realizing that I kind of hit rock bottom with myself, with my own self-love. So I started going to therapy, and this therapist wasn't like a normal therapist. She was kind of like a life coach. So she went a lot into emotions and spirituality. And I think she kind of opened me up a bit to that. And then I did some hypnosis with a friend's sister. And just one day I woke up and just felt this immense sense of, I was doing all the work. It had been like a year and a half of doing the work. The hypnosis just kind of woke something up in me. And I said, I need to learn to read records for somebody else. So I contacted another teacher. I said, I want to do level 1 again, and I'm going to do level 2. I did that all in the span of a couple weeks. So since I had already done level 1, I was like, I'm just
yeah,
going to
you
go
were
full
prepared.
into level 2.
Mm,
but I wanted like a refresher, right? So I did all of it. And then I was like, all right, I'm ready. I had a 9 to 5 at the moment. And I was like, all right, I put myself out there. I was doing readings on evenings and weekends until I got to about 50 free readings.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right,
That's
I'm
a
going to start.
lot.
That's how much I didn't trust myself.
Yeah.
I always say that to people, like each journey is individual. I could have probably just done 30, which was basically what my teacher had said. Just do 30. It could be a little bit less. And I did 50. I was like, I need 50. And then, yeah, and then people started coming to me and I kept getting more confident with my channeling. It was a lot of internally feeling like deserving of being a reader of the Akashic Records. And then Lou and I created our level 1. We later went on to create level 2. And we teach it online now, like it's all virtual. But it really was linked to me finally realizing that I had that inside of me. I had to just shut it off for so long. And I'd always loved being of service and something creative, something spiritual, but I felt like that wasn't for me. Like I wasn't good enough. So it was really hard to, I guess, connect with it at that moment in my life when I did level 1.
What
But
helped
great.
what helped you, I guess, to like let go of the old life that you had, the old job, and like I guess the security that a more like 9 to 5 job gives us, and to just say whatever, like I'm just trusting this now.
It was hard. No, and it's probably, I think I did like over 2 years where I was doing just readings on the side and it was my passion. And in between all that, we started the podcast with my sister. So I was literally, if I wasn't working at my 9 to 5, I was working at home doing readings for people or working on the podcast or doing interviews or the website or just always thinking of ideas. I knew I wanted to move in that space, but I was too scared to let go of my 9 to 5. But then the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, I lost my job. And it was like a blessing in disguise because I would probably have stayed there way longer than I was already there longer than I should have been. But in hindsight, it literally provided, because it was a job in marketing and media. So it literally provided me with all of the knowledge I needed to start my own business and to do my own work. So I was already experiencing that at the moment.
Yeah.
But I get that fear. And I was miserable at my job. I was like, I want to go. I don't want to be here anymore. But there's so much fear. And the universe is like, we got you. And it was like the moment that I actually had the energy where the job was gone. And I said, okay, I'm going full into this. Like I'm literally committing to this. I'm going to keep studying. I got certified for breath work and meditation. I studied the flower essences at that time. I was studying astrology. I did like 3 years of astrology. I'm studying family constellations now. So I'm always kind of like growing. And how I can be of service.
Yeah, I again kind of going to like, I guess more like matrix living and this like structure, and I don't know, like a lot of people want security from knowing what's coming up. And I think in this way, a lot of people are like, it's best to be like a specialist. Like pick your thing, stick to it, get really good. That's what people love. Personally, I love generalists, like people that are great and have loads of modalities. And that doesn't mean that they're not specialists in each one too. Like you're a specialist in the Akashic Records, but then you also do the other stuff. And I feel like that gives someone a higher perspective, more tools that they can offer to people, and more like understanding that, you know, all your answers aren't in the Akashic Records. They're not in the flower essences. They're in what's calling you now, right? And you can offer that to people and you can bring the different things in. And even if you don't say, oh, there's this thing from like family constellations in an Akashic Records reading, because you might think like, this isn't the time to like just drop in this thing. This person might not be comfortable. But like maybe you'll bring in that wisdom yourself, or you'll bring in the wisdom from like your marketing.
Yeah. And I bring in the marketing into the community, like supporting people and trying to, and I have a lot of clients.
Your Patreon is amazing.
It's amazing. It's like a little family.
So glad I joined. Yeah.
But I think the marketing side is like, I've tried to attract a lot of people that are moving away from things that have not filled them to starting their own businesses. So helping them with their logos, with their websites, with finding their branding, or training people. Like I'll train people on like GarageBand, like start your podcast. You can do this. Like you have the knowledge, just start practicing it. But I do think I agree with what you're saying, because I think I was always told, like, you need to do one thing good. And I think I did focus a lot on the Akashic Records because I needed to. And I think that's given me the strength and the ability now to really listen to my intuition also outside of the records. So even with the flowers, I can connect to the person's energy and say, this flower, it's this flower. Like this flower is going to be way more powerful for this person. Or even with just even family constellations that I'm studying now, it's all energy. It's connecting to the soul of the family. And to me, why I started moving in that direction about 1.5 years ago was because I was already connecting to that information in my Akashic record readings. So I said, and I think a lot of people on the spiritual path, when you're being of service, we all get into different moments and points in our journey where we feel stagnant. It's like, I want to help further, but I can't. I need to learn something else here. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It just means they're guiding you to do something more. And it's always going to evolve. Like you're never going to just stay on one path. I think for some people, maybe that's valid, but most people will feel called to do more.
I think that's really good advice. Yeah. If you feel stuck, if you feel like, oh, things aren't moving, I'm not moving, just do something random, just do something new, and just like get yourself out of a rut just by picking just one new thing to learn about. I find that,
everything, like I'll bring in the breath work to when I open the records. I'll bring in the breath work to myself. I can bring it into when I do a course online or when I guide people. It comes very handy with family constellations. I'm bringing exercises for family constellations in my counseling and my records. The flowers come in and also help, and like all of it complements each other. None of it is opposing, right? So I think it's all helping. And you can pull on the tools that person will need, because you'll be able to show up for them better.
I love building our toolboxes. I think I'm really grateful for building my toolbox and for having new ways of dealing with hard moments. I think that's what I'm like really, really grateful for lately. And I think, you pull what you need right now. But like to get there, you need to kind of like experiment with different things and get to know different things, and also get to know what doesn't work for you. And like, that's okay too. Like everyone has their own things and their own callings and their own connections.
And everything leads you to the next thing. Like I studied Reiki in between all this, but I don't really use it. I'll use it on myself sometimes. I think I remember during the pandemic, I believe we did like a huge mass. Like we just put in like anybody that wants to receive Reiki. It was my mom, my sister, myself, and a friend of mine. The 4 of us all sent Reiki at the same time to people. It was so cool. And just getting the feedback from people, I was like, see, in most cases, I'd probably use it, or if somebody needed it, I would be more than willing to help them. But it just, I guess it doesn't resonate. To me, the channeling resonates more for me
than the energy healing.
But who knows? You never know when you're going to use a tool, right?
Well, we're close to time. So as my beautiful first podcast
I feel so honored.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to surprise you with a question that I hope to ask absolutely everyone that may or may not come on this podcast. So the podcast is called Intuitively Being You. So what helps you to be your intuitively you and to connect with your intuition, Lorena?
To honor my emotions.
I love that.
Yeah, I think there's been so many years of me feeling this repression, internal repression, due to different circumstances growing up and situations, that I think the more I can honor what I'm feeling, the more I can make decisions from my intuition, because otherwise I'm blocked. And I think that's valid for a lot of people, where if you're blocking emotions and you're blocking things from your body, how will you listen when it comes through? It might be, since for a lot of people, intuition is a feeling in their body, or it can be a message or a knowing. But if we're not connected to our body and our emotions, that can become just a little harder, or a lot harder.
Wow, chills. What a beautiful answer. Absolute chills.
I came like that. I was like, yes.
Yeah, I was kind of like, I'm going to surprise you with this. And you were like, no, you're not.
No, I love, that's definitely something I'm realizing more and more. It's a journey, right?
Amazing. Thank you so much.